This is on here. Hello, everybody. Sorry I am late. Uh-oh. It looks like when the mic's in, I can't have this plugged in. That's okay. I will take the mic out if I need to. I did play with this mic a little earlier, and I feel like the mic sounds good, so let me know if it doesn't sound good. Um, where do I share this? No. Star Sender. What is that? Here's the comments. I can go. Am I even on the right page? Let's hope I'm on the right page. I think I can share out on this one. Anyways, hello, my name is Sasha with Ray of Hope, Reiki, and more. We pick a book for healing, and this is our first book back since I moved. I am going to, if you can share out for me, that would be great. I always put these on YouTube. I don't know how long this book will take us, but we'll just play it by ear. You hear the dinging in the background. That is just Troy. He is working on the lights. Okay, and then maybe I'll go into this. Ooh, I do not want to hear myself. Let's go like that, and then I'll move the comments over. Hello, Miss Crystal. Hello, how are you? I'm excited and not excited about this book. This book is called Triggers by David Richo, author of How to Be an Adult in Relationships, How We Can Stop Reacting and Start Healing. This book will help us reclaim our power, serve as a catalyst for transformation, and teach us all how to step more fully into caring for each other and the world. It should be interesting. So, there's a part at the beginning that says, for Beverly, walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking alone in the light. And then it says that's from Helen Keller. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chapters. And this is the introduction. I do want to learn as I go, so I may pause. Let me know in the comments that you can hear me well, Crystal, if you're there. But I may pause at moments because I want to really take this in and try to learn, because I know that through this move I have had a lot of triggers. Okay. I was going to bring my drink in here too, but hopefully we'll be good. So this is the introduction. This is page 1. Someone says something to us, and we are suddenly struck with a sinking feeling in our stomach. Someone does something, and instantly we become enraged or alarmed. Someone comes at us with a certain attitude, and we go to pieces. We hear mentions of a person, place, or thing that is associated with an unresolved issue or a past trauma, and we immediately feel ourselves seize up with sadness, anger, fear, or shame. When any of this happens, we can be sure a trigger has been pulled. We find ourselves in a stimulus response experience that happens to all of us. The stimulus is referred to as a metamorphical term, as either a trigger or a button. What she said triggered me. What he does pushed my buttons. I got hooked again. We might also say, I have a charge on this using an electrical analogy. A trigger is any word, person, event, or experience that touches off an immediate emotional reaction. For example, sadness, depression, anger, aggression, fear, panic, or humiliation, shame, Words, behaviors, attitudes, events, even the presence of certain people can incite reflex reactions in us over which we have no control. For example, we are suddenly surprised by a noise and we are startled. The noise is the stimulus/trigger. The startle is the reaction. Our reaction can be brief or long. Sometimes we can move through our reaction in a moment. Sometimes it becomes an obsession, hard to shake off. This disempowers us and plunges us into a sense of being unsafe and insecure. A trigger and then a reaction, a trigger and a reaction. A reaction to a trigger is often excessive. A reaction to a trigger is often, yeah, it is excessive, isn't it? Larger than what is warranted by the stimulus. So tell us how we can not be triggered. Longer lasting than what fits the triggered event. The extent to which a trigger affects us is proportional to how thick or thin-skinned we are. The more sensitive we are to others' behaviors towards us, the more fiercely does our fear, anger, or shame erupt. The more sensitive we are to others' behavior towards us, the more fiercely does our fear, anger, and shame erupt. So that probably is like the people that we're closest to can trigger us the easiest, right? As we become stronger, more self-assured, we notice that the arrows of others don't penetrate so deeply. In wider context regarding ourselves and society, we need to develop a thick enough skin to cope with our world and its shadow side rather than hide from it. Then we can face the onslaught of our imposing world with courage to deal and heal. This book can help us do this. We can come to notice what triggers us and understand why. This is how we reclaim our power, have more choices about our immediate reaction, find healing from processing a triggered experience. When a trigger stays the night with us, lasts too long, it is a signal. There is something to look into to deal with. For instance, someone at work has triggered us and it is keeping us up at night. We are finding out that we need to have a conversation with him, work the conflict out, speak up for ourselves. This is an example of how a trigger can beckon us to a healthy assertiveness. Our reaction is also based on our belief about how serious the trigger is. Examples of beliefs are assumptions, illusions, projections, suppositions. Our reaction moves from belief to expression, first as a feeling and then sometimes with a follow-up of words or actions. Using all this happens without our having a chance to consider what makes the most sense for us in the situation. Triggers and reactions happen so fast that we don't have a chance to pause. Look at what is really happening and make a wise choice. This is because triggers activate our limbic system, where the emotions reside, not our prefrontal cortex, where rational thoughts preside. We might say that the limbic system is like a horse, at times sprinting, at times wild. The prefrontal cortex is like reins. We are the riders with varying but certainly improvable levels of skills. Okay. Trigger is an appropriate metaphor for what provokes these immediate reactions because I can't say that word. The catalyst of our reactions is in the hands of someone else. Using the button metaphor, as in he pushes my button, suggests that someone does something and a nuclear reaction is set off in us. When the trigger is a hook, we are pulled into a reaction we regret or are angry at ourselves for biting it again. All three metaphors show how we lose our personal power. Someone or something has hijacked our equanimity, gaining power over our feelings and actions. This is why triggers exaggerate our feelings, reactions, and beliefs about their meanings. All this is totally normal. Being triggered is not dysfunctional, though. Our reactions to a trigger might be. In my work as a therapist and a teacher, I have heard clients and students talk about being triggered with increasing frequency in recent years. Some triggers experiences can be quite serious. For example, a soldier with PTSD triggered by a sound that reminds him of combat, or a sexual assault survivor triggered by a touch that reminded her of her abuser. Our triggers may be may be connected to less dramatic experiences, but people's reactions still seem to take control over them. This book explores all kinds of triggers and reactions. I hope it will help you find greater understanding and relief, but it is important to note that some triggers and reactions are so deeply ingrained and powerful that working with a trained therapist may be an essential step in finding healing. So we all may need some therapy. A person triggers us in direct proportion to how important he has become to us in reality or in our minds. For instance, someone we care deeply about may trigger us by showing any sign of abandoning us. Someone who threatens or scares us will easily trigger us even when he does not intend to do so. Someone we have a crush on and obsess about will trigger us by almost anything she does. When we have given power to someone, we have placed his or her finger on a trigger, and sometimes it is a hair trigger. But this does not mean that we should avoid caring about people. Rather, we can learn to understand and work with our triggers and reactions. Sometimes a trigger can be immediate, here and now, with no earlier examples of it. For instance, the first time we hear of a person in our family dying, we are stricken with grief and we weep. Usually, however, a trigger is a replay of an earlier experience. The original stimulus can be anything from a minor distress last year to a major trauma decades ago, especially in our childhood years. Those early experiences evoked grief that we have not yet fully felt or resolved. Thus, triggers can arouse post-traumatic stress that we wish to avoid, yet they also thereby give us a lively chance to recognize and mourn our losses, disappointments, and abuses. Indeed, every trigger is a catalyst for grief. Our sudden reaction, for example, sadness, is how we begin to show that grief. A triggering event that is a throwback to an archaic trauma feels like it is happening in the present. The brain's amygdala, part of our limbic system, stores original traumas and fear reactions with no sense of time, of impact, or of our intervening years of growing and self-strengthening. This is why triggers today can give us the sense that we are still as powerless as we were in childhood. We forget that we have inner resources to help us deal with challenges, or we neglect to use these resources because that part of the brain is not online. The amygdala has commandeered all the channels. Sometimes when we are triggered, for instance, we become mute, dumbfounded, or numb. Our amygdala has silenced our thinking mind. We rebuke ourselves later as we gain back our full mental power. We think, I should have said ... That makes sense, because a lot of the times when I look back, I'm always like, I could have said this in the moment. But a lot of the times, like when I'm trying to cope in a situation, I just shut down. But we did not have access to that calm thought process because the limbic system has blunted it. Triggers activate the sympathetic nervous system. Me too, girl. Triggers activate the sympathetic nervous system. We are moved towards flight, fight, or freeze. Flight, fight, or freeze. I've heard the fight or flight, but I've never heard the freeze part, and I really like that because sometimes I do freeze. Stress hormones chime in, all beyond our immediate control, another reason we feel powerless. Today, thanks to neuroscience and more specifically research on brain plasticity, we are aware that we can reprogram our neurological pathways to change our self-defeating patterns. Yay for us! The prefrontal cortex can come up with healthy ways to respond to events. Then we do not have to be at the mercy of immediate, irrational, and unplanned reactions. Yet nonetheless, the impulse to react does not disappear easily, even when we lay down new neural patterns. Our spiritual practices may also help somewhat, but not even they are always robust enough to cancel our limbic reactions entirely. So we do not have to be hard on ourselves when we still react in ways we are uncomfortable with. Instead, we can observe, learn, and practice. Indeed, with conscious attention, our prefrontal cortex can reframe events and experiences so they do not have to be so triggering. The prefrontal cortex in full activation can calm some of the amygdala overblown reactions, to move from our primitive brain to our reasonable cortex. We can evoke an alternative thought that is positive and resource enhancing. Gradually, the new thought takes over. St. Paul wrote, "Brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Okay. A trigger can, of course, be positive, a stimulus arousing joy, erotic excitement, or optimism. We are triggered with chills and a lump in our throat when our team scores a win or when we see an example of the triumph of the human spirit. A photo of happy times gone by might trigger a warm sense of nostalgia. We are triggered when we experience love at first sight or feel the magic of a kiss. But today we use the word trigger mostly to refer to what is disturbing and unpleasant. Our topic in this book is that negative triggering that arouses not only sadness, anger, or fear, but also at times hurt, shame, guilt, disappointment, letdown, regret, despair. In these cases, our reflex action might be fleeing, fighting, or freezing, but all overdone. Our experience feels negative when we flee too fast, fight too hard, freeze too long. A trigger can dead end by leading only to a reaction with no resource that would allow us to cope with our reaction. In this book, we shall see the triggers don't have to end that way. Once we have tools to handle them, we can insert a third option between stimulus and response. We can move from a 2-part experience to a 3-part practice. And then it has trigger and an arrow that says reaction. And then it says can be a trigger, arrow to reaction, arrow to resource. Then gradually it might happen this way, and it says a trigger to resource. So essentially we're trying to take out the reaction part. So there's a trigger, and instead of reacting, we go to our resources, which would be nice. I think my drink is over there. I'm going to grab that because anytime I'm reading, my throat gets really dry. So give me 1 second. Okay. I would love to experience a trigger and to go to a resource. I really hope that this helps that. Okay. We can mobilize inner resources not only to cope with triggering events, but even to work through the traumas that causes them. The trauma that causes them. To heal some of our post-traumatic stress, the triggers then have less power over us. We move from feeling unsafe to safer and from feeling insecure to more secure. The essence of self-trust. Triggers thrive on the illusion that we can't trust ourselves. With inner resources, we find out we can trust ourselves indeed and indeed. That makes no sense. Trauma never goes entirely away, but it can become what happened rather than what still hurts. We will not eliminate triggers altogether, but we no longer have to react to them so extremely. We can modify both our susceptibility to being triggered and a reaction to being triggered. We can learn to catch ourselves before we react blindly. The impact of triggers can be blunted and our reaction time can be shortened. We can disable the trigger mechanism so that we are not wounded, only scratched. All this happens when we engage in serious work on our traumas. Especially in therapy. We then become more aware of the connection between triggers and what we have to work on in ourselves. Our goal is not to root out all our triggers, but to find a trailhead from them into a psychological and spiritual work that has been so long awaiting us. This is how we turn our triggers into tools. As we marshal our inner resources, more and more of our daily triggers can turn into information with no further invasion into our peace of mind. This one was gifted to us right before we moved. We honestly should have read it before we moved because there's been a lot of triggers. I think I saw it was only like $11. But I don't know if that that was on Amazon because normally I order my stuff on Amazon, so it might be a little bit more on Amazon. I want to do couples therapy, but okay. Oh, he said that. She is doing that. Looks like they have that attitude towards me. How interesting. We keep in mind all our discussions about traumas, however, that some were so serious and severe that they might not easily go away and resources might not easily kick in. In this book, we learn how our inner resources are capacities that help us handle what we feel, what we experience, and what others do to us, what happens to us, what life sends our way. A resource is a technology, a competency that we can learn to access with ease. I think that once we get actually into the book too, I think that it'll, see chapter 1. I think that it'll be easier because this is like, you're like really, the introduction is obviously like boasting about what this book can do for you and stuff like that. And I feel like when we get into it, I'm hoping it'll dumb it down a lot more. And then I'll be like, okay, so this is a tool I can use, right? We're called Five Below. I don't know if we have one of those around here. I'm like the worst. If it's not Walmart, Amazon, Winco, like Fred Meyers, if it's not, like, we don't shop much. I don't know where it was. That's another thing. When I had the book, I would use like a paper. Let's see. Okay. When we're triggered, we do not have to be victims of what others say or do. We are equipped to handle the slings and arrows that come at us. The chapters that follow will help us take arms against a sea of troubles. Tender arms, of course. Inner resources are like aquifers nourishing us. They help us trust that what happens will not do what triggers can do, throw us for a loop, plunge us into something, turns us into targets, or makes us collapse in fear or shame. Our best inner resource is our natural resourcefulness, our inventiveness, and ingenuity in making the most of any hand we are dealt or in dodging any bullet headed in our direction. This does not mean that we will not sometimes have more to face than we can handle. Inner supplies can at times be so minimal that they cannot match the triggers or crisis that has assailed us. When that happens, we activate the inner resource that gives our immediate inadequacy a boost. We ask for help. We turn to our outer resources, our support system to help us through. We turn within for valuable resources, both psychologically and spiritually. Psychology helps us develop inner resources like awareness of our needs and the ability to express and fulfill them in all the right places. We can learn to manage our feelings, to free ourselves from inhibitions, to trust our ingenuity, spiritually offering resources such as meditation, mindfulness, freedom from attachments, letting go of our ego. Each of these can become a characteristic of our personality. Our psychological work and spiritual practice work together to increase and enrich our inner resources. Eventually, we become what we practice. I love that. It's talking about meditation. Five Below in Ogden? That's too far away, girl. The alternative responses might include turning to an addiction in the face of anxiety or threat. We might use food, sex, alcohol, or other drugs to deal with the curveballs like life pitches to us. All this diminishes our resourcefulness, but no matter how rusty our tools have become, we can restore them to full luster. Here is the path we will find in this book. We focus first on triggers, what they are, why they happen, and where they come from. Then we look at the tools that help us handle them, both in us and around us. These resources are psychologically, neuroscientific, and spiritual. We then pay particular attention to the triggers that leads to sadness, anger, and fear. Since these are the three main feelings components of grief, we explore that dimension. Sadness, anger, and fear. We also look at how triggers happen in relationships. In all the sections, we will find useful practices, including ones from Buddhist teachings. As the readers, you may be struck by passages in this book that you highlight or underline. I recommend noting these ideas in a journal or an iPad and ponder their meaning. Interesting. You can also write them out on cards and create a set of flashcards to work with daily. What strikes any of us in a book is a positive trigger that can point to our work on ourselves. Healing in many areas of our lives is the welcome result. I love flashcards. I have a really hard time learning, and flashcards are my favorite. Each of us can ask, have my inner reserves been substantial enough to accommodate the triggers and challenges in my life story so far? What follows in these pages explores that question and constructs a compass for our journey through whatever mysterious forest we find ourselves in. Not be a petty. Oh my gosh, girl. I just need to stop snapping. Okay, what triggers us and why is chapter 1, but chapter 1 also goes into, what triggers us and why. And then on page 18, it goes real and imagined triggers. Page 20 is when the trigger is inside us. Page 26 is inner demons. And page 30 is what makes triggers so disturbing. So maybe we'll try to read what triggers us and why. This could make, this is making my stomach sick. Maybe I'm the only one. To page 18. We could, let's see. We'll see. I'll put like a something in there. We'll see how far we. This is. This could be too much. This could be too much. We'll see. Okay. This is page 9. What triggers us and why? In this chapter, we peer more intently into our topics of triggers. We learn about ourselves and our past by what triggers us. We learn about ourselves and our feelings by our reactions. That's Troy's phone. We find ways to move from autopilot to self-piloting, from reactions to responses. Our triggers then turn into sources of healing, and we become enormously optimistic about our own power of transformation. There are no bulletproof vests for the psyche. It is a fact of life that some events have emotional impacts and activate a stressful reaction in us. They hook us, yank our chain. In fact, trigger is from a Dutch word meaning pull. When we are triggered, we are pulled into a reaction. We might feel scared, lose our temper, feel hurt, be stricken with grief, be shocked, have the wind knocked out of us, and fall apart. Some events simply irk us, but do not lead to an over-the-top reaction. When we simply notice a stimulus without reaction, we are not triggered. Witnesses in the opposite of being triggered. This is why mindfulness, witnessing the here and now without reacting, is an essential tool for having fewer triggers and efficiently handling the ones we have. He triggers me when he comes at me that way. She pushes my buttons as no one else can. They hook me every time. In all of these scenarios, we may feel like victims of our triggers and of other people. In reality, triggers are tricksters. They make a two-part experience seem like one. This is because our reactions happen so close on the heels of the stimulating event. Actually, the trigger part, one of the experience, is indeed instigated by someone else, but our reaction, part 2, is our own responsibility. So triggers are the experience. Triggers are the experience. Reactions is our own responsibility. So how I react to a trigger is my own responsibility. Okay. Our reactions part 2 is our own responsibility and is based on our own past experiences. Reaction is our own responsibility and can be affected by past experiences. I'm going to have to journal a little bit while I do this because I really am trying to take in this book. Get in my head, y'all. It's scary. We are being bullied by our own unfinished business. So we're bullying ourselves. A triggering experience alerts us to a psychological issue in ourselves that needs to be addressed, processed, and resolved. The trigger finger is especially our own when we simply let one trigger event after another occur, especially with the same person. I'm sorry, Chris. He or she is not the cause of the trigger, only the catalyst. A trigger arouses, evokes, or induces. It does not produce. A trigger is a contributing factor, not a determining factor. Each of us will react differently in accordance with the personal issues a trigger incites. In the same way that the term Everglades will evince a different reaction and have a different meaning to a resident of Florida than a resident of Kansas. However, I also have a disclaimer. There are times when trigger reaction is caused by someone. There are times when we do not have much choice about how we will react or respond. In cases of violent physical attack, for instance, we are triggered into a fearful or defensive reaction. Someone inflicting harm on our bodies is not a catalyst, it is the cause of our distress. This applies to any abuse of which we are victims. Our feelings in reaction to triggers are on a spectrum from being caused by being catalyzed. The degree of threat or impact will either influence or determine our reaction. The margin of freedom in our response is a matter of percentage. For example, 50-50, 90-10. In this book, we are focusing on triggers in the context of relationships. So catalyst triggers are our topic, not casual ones. We are focusing on how we have resources, so choices will be our topic rather than instances of no choice. The New Age pop psychology assertion that we are fully in charge of our feelings is a dangerous illusion. We are not fully in charge of our feelings. That's validating. It insists that we are or can always be in full control. That is not in keeping with the implacable given of life that we are not. For instance, someone receiving shocking news of the sudden death of a close friend or relative, a sane, sensitive person will react with shock and grief. Her body will experience an automatic change in heart rate, breathing, pulse, brain synapses. This is a normal and appropriate human response. It is not something we can avoid, nor is it healthy to try to control it likewise. I am sure that if any of us were to die unexpectedly and suddenly, we would like to believe that our family and friends would feel what loved people feel, shock and grief as final tributes from those who care about us. It is up to us to explore the origin of our triggered reflexes and work on moving past them. We can learn how to do this. It will take seeing a trigger as a pointer to our work rather than seeing as simply a justified reaction. In this way, a trigger arouses our curiosity about ourselves rather than only a reaction to others. So when we get triggered, should we be writing that down? When we get triggered, should we be writing down when we're being irrational so that we can figure out how and why we're being triggered? It is up to us to explore the origin of our triggered reflexes and work on moving past them. We can learn how to do this. It will take seeing a trigger as a pointer. Like the trigger is the arrow for us to think, why is this happening? In this way, a trigger arouses our curiosity about ourselves rather than only a reaction to others. We find out exactly where to focus our energy so we can liberate ourselves from being hijacked by others' behaviors. In other words, we become independent adults. Are we not independent adults? Each person has some unique trigger points. Some triggers are universal, though individual reactions may be quite diverse. Some common triggers, hot buttons, most of us will recognize include the following. Should we look at it? First, I want to put triggers. I liked how it said triggers are arrows that help us investigate further. That's what I got from what we just read. Some of these words are really big. I'm not like the brightest. I am smart, but like some of the words are a little whew. Triggers are arrows that help us investigate further. So here's some common ones. We are with people who are expressing their feelings, and we are especially triggered when the feelings are directed at us. So, do you have a trigger when people share emotions about the way you're making them feel? Like when your spouse shares that they're being hurt by you, does that trigger you? Am I supposed to write that down? Okay. We experience a sudden loss. That's going to trigger anyone. We receive bad news. Yeah. A natural disaster occurs. That does, that is triggering. Someone is acting aggressive or violent. Aggression is triggering. A person, place, or thing reminds us of a past distress or trauma. Obviously, past. This said it was common stuff. So most of us are going to say yes. Books, movies, or songs may evoke feelings, arouse a memory, give us insight, motivate a change, or set a mood. Movies or songs from our past may trigger nostalgia. I don't feel like I have a lot of happy triggers. We experience stress that leads to an addictive reaction. In this example, the trigger is not a cause but can be a catalyst. So people can go under extreme stress and then lead to addiction. Okay, that's not me. Here are 9 categories of triggers that most of us can relate to with specific examples of how they arise. We feeling self-conscious. So these are the ones. Maybe I should like star this so I'm not having to write. We are being humiliated or judged as inadequate. I feel like I judge myself a lot as inadequate, but yeah. We are alone or part of a minority in a group that is different from us in gender, race, sexual orientation, religion, political alignment, financial status. I don't know. I would say no to that one, but I also think that I've been harshly judged because I've went to a more holistic life. We feel shame when we compare where we are in life to how far others have progressed. We go on guard when references are made in a conversation to age, status, health, grooming, clothes, looks, accomplishments. We are called upon for public speaking. So I think when I'm feeling inadequate or judged, that's more of a trigger for me. Those other ones didn't really. Being discounted. This is the next section. It says our adult children do not want to spend as much time with us as we want them to. Someone is sarcastic towards us. We are scapegoated, ridiculed, mocked, teased, or baited. And if anybody's mocked, teased, we are patronized, put down, shown contempt. We are disrespected, which may feel especially triggering if abuse or aggression is happening too. When we feel disrespected. I'd love to know what Troy's triggers are. We lose face or are belittling or shamed. What may feel especially triggering if it occurs in front of others whose opinion is support us. Feeling belittled or shamed. We are snubbed or slighted. We are stood up or stranded, kept waiting for an inordinate amount of time, have an appointment canceled at the last minute. Yeah, that's sometimes people don't like the crystal stuff and what I do, so. Someone is acting as if we were not there, as if our words, feelings, actions don't matter. Our experience is not believed. Our stating of a fact supported by logic and evidence is denied. Well, obviously. Yes, yes. And he still definitely has a lot of wounds from the family stuff because it's obviously not resolved. It's just kind of. I'm sure I think he was on here. I don't know if he's still on here. But this is a good book to listen to. Feeling we are controlled. We're being controlled or around someone who is controlling. Yeah. That would be a trigger for Troy. I think that I was talking about this with someone. I can't remember who I was talking it about. But I was like, I'm really trying to step back on being like, I overly control everything. And I feel like because my childhood and all of my trauma was like I was so out of my control. I couldn't control anybody's reactions, anybody's like, it was such a roller coaster that I tend to be super like controlling, very type A, very, what is it? Not multitasky, but like micromanagey, like I'm just very like that. And that's not very healthy. I don't know if you guys know that, but trying to control every outcome of every part of every day of everything is not very good. So I'm really trying to step back on that. Because I want to control everything. We're being told what our reality is. Someone is imposing his or her reality on us. My reality is true and Troy's reality is true. Someone is making decisions for us. We are being told what we feel, what we do, or how to think. Okay. This one says being taken advantage of. Yeah. Yeah. And like since we've moved back to here, or not back to here, we haven't been here before. And it was just like such extreme stress that I just noticed myself being so quick to react to things and like having a lot more panic attacks and stuff. I haven't had panic attacks since I was back with my toxic family, and now like I'm starting to have more panic attacks and like just more anxiety, needing more like mindfulness and meditation and stuff. So it's just been super stressful. I mean, like we do have to give ourselves praise and credit because we moved ourselves. We didn't have a ton of help. Like Troy practically killed himself moving everything. by himself, and I had to like kind of try to nurse him back to health because his body was just like he was moving all that heavy stuff by himself. And then after that, I kept not only taking care of him and the kids, but then I like was unpacking the entire house, organizing the entire house. Like, we have not stopped. So we do have to give ourselves credit. We have done a lot, and I'm really proud of ourselves. But we need a break. Okay. Anyways, being taken advantage of. We are robbed or lose money by being fooled, cheated, or conned. We are not paid for a service or paid back for a loan. We are not given what we believe is our due. We are given less than what others have been given. We are lied to, tricked, duped, deceived, or betrayed. We are misrepresented, misunderstood, suspected, discredited, falsely accused. So none of those are triggers for me because we don't have those triggers. The next one is feeling vulnerable. People are not supportive of or shame us for our feelings. People are not supportive of or shame us for our feelings. We are about to take a test or receive the results of one. I always did bad at tests. So test taking is probably a trigger. We feel we have no resource when others are unfair towards us or when we are facing overwhelming problems. We feel like we have no resources when others are unfair towards us or when we are facing overwhelming problems. We are cut off in traffic. Our passenger is acting as a backseat driver. We have an accident or a near accident. Someone repeats an annoying habit or something she or he already agreed not to do, knowing it bothers you. Someone repeats an annoying habit. A schmexual experience brings up disturbing feelings and thoughts that linger in a confusing way. Relationship experiences. We displease someone and fear consequences. We feel engulfed or smothered by someone's over attentiveness. I'm probably the smotherer. The person we love does not show up for us or turn on us. People who matter to us show that they are not in our corner or they side with others against us. That like is a huge like loyalty. My family betrayed us, Troy's family betrayed us in certain ways. Someone fails to attune to our feelings. We unexpectedly see someone we recently broke up with, see his or her ad on a dating site, hear how well she or he is doing. When you hear about somebody from your past, it does bring up those feelings and emotions from the past, right? Maybe that means I'm not healed from the past. Suddenly and unexpectedly, we see that I said that. We notice that a person we were once so close to now acts in an indifferent or disengaged way towards us. Yeah. Someone is coming at us while drunk or on substances. Someone is hitting on us or acting as an inappropriate way. Our boundaries are being crossed, either in a major way, such as overriding a decision of ours, or in minor ways, such as sticking a fork into our dish to taste our food at the kitchen table or at a restaurant. I like get so mad when Troy drinks my soda. I don't know why I do that. I wonder if what is it? Triggers are arrows that help us investigate further. What is the deeper meaning of that? Someone is rushing us, not respecting our timing. Bug. Um, we are being scrutinized, interrogated, or hit with a barrage of questions, especially just as we arrive home or work. I'm probably the triggerer when that one doesn't trigger me, but I'm probably the triggerer with that. But actually, I do get triggered by tons of questioning. I get overwhelmed so easy. I'm not perfect. Someone is trying to sell us something or convince us of something in a pushy way. Yeah, I don't know why. Someone is acting as if he or she has authority when he or she does not. Someone is in authority refuses to acknowledge our right to be heard. Our saying no is not respected. And this section is feeling uncomfortable about what is happening. A family member or partner does or says something in public that embarrasses us. We are about to meet a new person. Does that trigger you? No. We are about to have relations with somebody for the first time. Someone is talking about politics or religion in a way that is distasteful to us or contrary to our beliefs. I hate politics. I hate politics. Politics are very triggering for me. But it's that I know why that's triggering for me, and Troy doesn't talk about politics. So that's fine. But like, I don't like to talk about politics because it reminds me right of my mom. Like, Fox News was on 24/7, nonstop, screaming at the TV about politics. Nonstop. I don't think that's triggering for me anymore because I have this, I've kind of healed that part because Sam said meeting new people is triggering for me. And because I have this business and I do Reikis on people I don't know and I do readings on people I don't know and I have this business like that, and I think we're on our third year, that is not triggering to me. I don't know. I'm just way more open to that now. Yeah. I mean, I could see how that would be triggering, questioning my knowledge. Yeah. All growing up, I was called like stupid and, oh, she just has a really hard time. She just has a really hard time. She's really stupid. And I know I'm autistic and I know that during stressful times I will be a little bit more autistic, if that makes sense. It's harder to mask my autism when I'm under more stress. So I don't feel like anybody close to me questions my knowledge. Yeah, totally. Okay, where were we? Someone is telling a joke that puts others down. I don't like others being put down. I do. That is a trigger for me. Or like if I feel like someone's being degraded or like we hear the news and strongly oppose what politicians and government body. I just can't stand the news. We see someone harming an animal. Yeah, triggering. Psycho. Right? The next part is fearing what might happen. And I think this is the last section of this, like the question part. We are questioned, accused, or threatened by an authority figure such as a boss, the IRS, or the police. Threatened by an authority figure. That took me somewhere. That was not a good memory. Water break. That took me somewhere. That's another reason why we can't do a ton in this book, because this book is called Triggers. Okay, let's see what the next question said. Someone is using loaded words, actions, or gestures that have judgmental or threatening impact. Yeah. Someone comes at us with facial expressions that represent rejection or judgment. For example, a frown of impatience, disgust, reprimand, or rage. Yeah. Yeah. There is a tone in the voice of someone that seems threatening, dismissive, condescending, which may feel especially triggering if it reminds us of a tone of our parents towards us. Okay. We are triggered by a superstition or magical thinking. For example, we may believe that punishment is coming our way because we have done wrong, or that rewards are owed to us because we have done good. Well, I was not rewarded, so punishments. I don't really feel like that one. It is like shadow work for your emotions. A big trigger for me. I got bullied in school too, Sam. That is one thing my parents did do. Like, they didn't want me to be bullied, so they were at the school a ton. I was just allowed to be bullied at home. But the bullies at the school, they can't do it, you know. Okay. We are through that part. And I think we can actually make it through this. We have 2 pages left, you guys. And then we will call it a night. And then next Wednesday, it'll be real and imagined triggers. So we're on page 16. Some people trigger us without having to do any of the actions on the list above. Yeah, that's really not surprising, right? The person's presence or even the thought of the person triggers a reaction. We might also be triggered if any of the events on this list happen to someone we love. Some triggers have a double wallop. For instance, using an example from the list above, we tell our daughter about the danger of substances she is using, and she refuses to listen. This triggers us, and we react with frustration, but with compassion too. We then show the evidence using scientific articles. She replies, "You can believe, but you want to believe." We are then triggered a second time because we know she is saying that we have no facts, only opinions. We react with more frustration, this time with the sense that we are being discounted and patronized. Notice in this example, as in all triggered experiences, that the other person pulls the trigger, but how we are hit is up to us. How we are hit is up to us. So they pull the trigger, but how it affects us is up to us. We notice also that every trigger on the list is a given of life and relationships. All triggers are. The list shows that the way life is sometimes and the way people are sometimes. Givens of life include loss, unfairness, painful experiences, failed plans. A given of human interaction is the possibility of disappointment, rejection, abandonment, betrayal. None of us is entitled to a life with no triggers. All of us are vulnerable to others and to events. At the same time, fortunately, all of us have the inner resources to say in response, yes, it is this way, and what is going on with me? With that attitude, we explore ourselves deeply rather than blame others uselessly. The more we accept reality with an unconditional yes, the less are we apt to be triggered. Each of us has his or her own roster of triggers. What triggers us may be water off a duck's back to our friend. We see her respond with assertiveness and confidence to a slight that would throw us for a loop. We admire her and wish we could be like that. Actually, however, it could be that that slights are not on her triggers list. So, in fact, it did not take much courage for her to respond. When her buttons are pressed, she may react without the confidence we observed in that instant. Some of what we call courage and chutzpah, is that an old word? Is really about not being triggered into inhibition. Triggers lead to self-doubt. We believe we cannot manage our feelings and reactions. We do not trust our inner resources. Assessing these tools, however, foster a restoration of safety and security. Likewise, safety and security in our relationship can take what is ordinarily triggered and make it no big deal. What might have pierced us before now bounces off us. As we saw above, triggers around grief. We are sad about a loss. We are angry at the one who caused it. We are afraid we will not be able to handle the empty space it has left in our life. An immediate aggressive reaction can be an avoidance of those components of grief. We then subvert an inner resource, our instinctive ability to mourn. We reduce our capacity to handle loss, disappointment, betrayal, and hurt. As we allow ourselves to experience our grief and accept it as part of life, we can discover pathways through it. This increases our self-trust. We feel assured that we have healthy resources and can access them appropriately when needed. Sometimes our reaction to a trigger leads us to violate our own principles. For instance, we suspect our partner is being unfaithful. We react with fear, hurt, and indignation. We then trespass over boundaries we would ordinarily honor. We search his cell phone, text emails, we do drive-bys, then healthy alternative is to tell our partner of our feelings and misgivings. We confront the concerning together in a dialogue or in therapy. Some triggers, for instance, being ridiculed in the presence of others, may not be re-stimulations of past traumas. That is, they may not be the result of post-traumatic stress. They may simply be appropriate responses to a truly disturbing situation. We might then collapse in shame, become enraged, or retaliate. The response that can become a practice is a mindful ouch, without judgment or vindictiveness, by simply saying ouch. So if somebody says something that triggers you, instead of allowing yourself to be triggered, you say ouch. Without judgment or vindication, by simply saying ouch. We assertively, not aggressively, set our boundaries and seek dialogue. If there is no room for reasonable discourse, our only healthy response is leaving the premises. A limbic atmosphere drowns out prefrontal dialogue. Okay. I must have skipped a page. Okay. So that was not too bad. It's only 9:30 and I'm acting like it's like 11 o'clock. Okay. So triggers are experiences. Reactions is our own responsibility and can be affected by past experiences. So I think for the next week, when we have a quick response or we notice that we are being triggered, I think that for me, I want to write down for the week before we start reading the next part, which is what? The next part is real or imagined triggers. That way, when something triggers me, if I write it down, then maybe I'll start to see a pattern, and then maybe the book will teach me how to not have a quick response, right? And then if I feel like I'm being triggered and I can say ouch if something hurts my feelings instead of saying rah, 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 rah. Or just say ouch, or Troy just say ouch, and then maybe it will get the other person to be like, what just happened here? Why is my partner saying ouch? Like, what happened? What was the reaction? What was the trigger? I'm going to write down my triggers, and then we're going to revisit it. All of us in that list had a ton, like we understand those triggers, but obviously, like, I don't feel like any of those that I read directly relates to the things that I'm being triggered by currently. But if we dive deeper into it and I like write down what's triggering me, then maybe I can relate it to like a past experience or to something on a more deeper level. I don't know. Very interesting so far. Obviously, I've never read this book. This book was recommended by Miss Chris P. And she did send it when Troy was going through a rough time. So I'm excited to read the next part. What was that? The next part has like a diagram. Are we taking a test? Guilt and shame. Guilt and shame in the next part. Yeah, I need to say ouch. And he needs to say ouch. Because I think if he said ouch, that would like, if your partner says ouch, or like, wouldn't that get you to think, oh, that would get me to be like, what? Why did I hurt his feelings? Or she hurt my feelings. He hurt my feelings. Like, you know what I mean? I think it might get your partner to step back. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Poor Crystal. It said the cancers were not cancers, but Geminis were gonna have like an angry week. Hopefully you're not having an angry week. We do have our sound bath tomorrow, and I will upload this to YouTube, and then we'll do the next episode on Wednesday at whenever the kids are in bed. So anytime from like 8 to 9 o'clock is when I'll pop on Mountain Standard Time. I know, but like that might carry on the disagreement, whereas ouch might get the other person to stop for a moment. I don't know. If he says that, maybe the conversation would keep going, wouldn't it? But if he said ouch, if he said ouch to you, would maybe pause, right? I don't know. I don't know. Every day gets a little better. Every day gets a little calmer. Our schedule is starting to get back on track. So anyways, you guys, I better get off of here. I need to go shower and then go to bed. Troy has work in the morning, and we got lots of stuff to get done. I need to finish sending out invoices. Yeah. Lead with gratitude and love and understanding, and we will all heal together and learn how to use resources for our triggers instead of allowing our triggers to control our lives, because we are healing together. I love you guys. Have a good night. Bye.